First and foremost, thank you for inviting me here. I'm Brandon Rogers. I'm from Orlando, Florida, born and raised. I moved to Ghana back in 2006, and really it was initially my first trip. Ghana was my first stamp in my passport. I had just graduated from FAMU, and I was searching for more. After FAMU, I did take a job in the architecture field, and I was working in Orlando. I was doing what we're quote unquote supposed to do, go to school or get good grades, get a good job. I had done just that, and now I was in my cubicle working in an architecture office right before, this was 2006. If you remember the climate of the country as far as development and banking, and everybody was getting loans for projects and so much stuff was going. It was before the crash in 2008. And so, yeah, it was buzzing, but I personally wasn't fulfilled in that cubicle. I had a friend who we had already made a plan that after college we were going to travel. Life hit us in different ways, and so we weren't able to keep to the timeline. When that happened, I took the job. He stayed the course, and about a year later, he traveled to Ghana. And he came to Ghana. I then felt like I had missed this opportunity, and I asked him straight up, I'm like, listen, is it everything that we thought it was going to be? And he was very honest with me, and he was like, yes. So at that point in time, I took the decision that no, I need to course correct and I need to get over there with him. And I did just that. That was 2006. He was interning with a local architect who was doing a lot of sustainable, what I like to call Afro-modern architecture. And so I fell in with a nice architecture firm, and so it was quite comfortable, the transition, and then it was fulfilling in that now I was no longer designing these apartment complexes that were styrofoam details and 2x4 construction. Now we were doing something a lot better in Ghana. And so it was very seductive. What I saw across the board, and this is going to essentially be my message for today, is opportunity. I was seeing this opportunity now without the weight of the world, of the Western world. It was like, I always use the analogy of zero gravity. Now I'm floating away, and there's no glass ceiling. And now the choice was, do I stay and pursue what I see here, or do I go back? And that was an easy decision. So I visited Ghana in 2006, and I stayed. I've been here ever since. I've gone back a couple times to see family and stuff like that, but I've never gone back to live. In the beginning, I said I was experimenting. In the field of architecture, you shouldn't use the word experiment, but that's literally what I was doing. I had been trained in architecture, and we were doing great work at the firm, but it was a lot of competitions. It was a lot of design. We weren't building. And architecture, you gotta build it. If you don't build it and it's just on my computer screen, like, that's art. It's beautiful and it's a great vision, but you've got to build it. You've got to walk in it. You've got to experience it. You've got to see if what you envision translates into reality. What I started to do at that point was to make a number of steps in that direction of this pursuit of community building. But before I could do that, I had to build houses. Before I could do that, I had to design houses. I literally took it step by step, and then I had to go back to a very elementary approach because I was here with no power tools. I was here with no resources. And so now I had to design things that I could literally build. So that changed my architecture. A lot of my early architecture is very, very elementary, very, very simple. It was in that I had to be able to build these things with my own two hands. A lot of the people that I found myself working for were other repatriates, and it was retirees. So again, now I was building on a pensioner's budget. I always used to say in the beginning, and it works, but it too was a kind of bit naive. I would say you don't need all the money at once. So if you know when the money is coming available, you can plan the work and the program around that flow of money and make it work for you. What I'll say now is, and the reason why I said it was naive, because at that time, I didn't understand the leverage that capital gives you. I had one friend who was another Black American, and he was the first person that said to me, he said, Brandon, I use money like a tool. The same way you're using your hammers, I use it like a tool, and I never thought about it like that. I was looking at it as something that I need to go and get so that I can do what I need to do. But what I later learned was when I had access to money, I remember my first client, I had built for a number, like I said, pensioners. So I'm like, okay, $1,000 here. Can you do 3,000? Can you do 4,000? And the first person was like, well, what if I gave you 10? What if I gave you 20? How does that change the program? How does that change the timeline? And that's when I started to learn about how access to capital could influence the project and make it more sustainable. So again, my approach was a very elementary approach from the beginning, and I chose to do the work because I would say I'm a bit of a charismatic speaker, and especially when I'm talking about my field, I get real passionate about it. And so what happens is a lot of people see me as the one, but at that time, I hadn't done it. So how can I stand here without having, I mean, it's theory. Yes, I can do it. I'm capable of doing it, but I have not done it. And this is your life savings. This is your this is your that. And so again, I went and did the work. I kept quiet. And I would do the work, and then when I finished the work, I would pop up and I would wave the flag to promote the work and to promote what we're doing. Then I would go back down and do the work again. You said something else earlier on about this one-man bandstand that we all end up becoming. In the beginning, that was another thing that I realized. And what happened with me, I used to say that isolation was actually one of my greatest, I don't want to say resources, but it was a great factor that helped me, but it was also my most limiting factor because I had to isolate myself to protect myself, but then at the same time, the right people couldn't find me. And so it was like a double-edged sword. My focus has been rural development. That first office I was working at was in Accra, Ghana, and it was over in Kanishi, and I realized quite fast that I did not move to Ghana for Accra. You know, I want to go where there is a blank canvas, and that's the minute you drive outside of Accra, it's beautiful, it's green as far as the eyes can see. And so I wasn't going to hustle and fight for the projects in Accra. I was going to go where everybody didn't want to go. Now, again, that was another strategy to help with like urbanization. You know, one of the biggest problems in Accra is everybody's leaving the village to come to Accra looking for opportunity. And that only leaves old people and children in the village. When really, if we were able to develop the villages, people wouldn't need to leave the villages the way that they're leaving. So that's what I've been doing. That's what I've done. It's been a journey, an epic journey throughout the years. But again, it's been a very rewarding journey. I don't have any regrets in that regard. My thing now, and this is why I've been waving the flag and promoting a lot more lately, is because it's the same thing that I realized with the house. When I was building the houses for the individuals who were repatriating, I would build them this house. The goal was a sustainable house. It's always off-grid, rural environments where we can grow food, we can this, we can that. But again, it was one house out in the middle of nowhere. And the individual would ask me, when do you think I'm going to get some neighbors? When do you think more people are going to come? When do you think this? And I'm like, no, look, nobody's coming. It's going to be 15, 20. Nobody's coming. You're way out here on the side of a mountain all alone. They're waiting for you to develop the road. They're waiting for you to bring lights. They're waiting for you to this. And then even when those people come, they're not the people that you're talking about. You know, and so you've now got to drive an hour and a half to go to Accra to fellowship, to have stimulating conversations. That was another one of the biggest issues that I realized. When I moved to Ghana, I separated myself from my support system. All those that were championing me, telling me, go and live your dream, pursue your passion. All of those people were back in America, and I was now here isolated alone. And if you go back that far, internet was dial-up internet. There's no smartphones. You know, this is before we were really connected. Facebook wasn't even, this is MySpace days. And so I was now isolated. This was now where I had to be self-sustaining. I had to be able to motivate myself. I had to be able to protect myself. I had to do everything alone. And so what would happen is you would yearn for more like-minded people. This again is why the whole thing always comes back to community, community, community. We need places, not just one place. We need multiple places where we can go, have safe, secure environments to thrive, not just to survive. A lot of people here are surviving, especially the repatriates. We have a number of different types of people that are coming. I typically say that and I'm not going to sum them up into these three, but you have pioneers who are coming because they have a vision and they see a better future, they see opportunity, they see a better life for their families. You have the total opposite. You have people who are running away from the West and the pitfalls of the West. And then you have another group of people who this was their dream. This was their vision for decades because of the movements. And so this is their end game goal. They have to make it here. They want to retire here. But what you find is by the time they come, they still have the motivation, but physically, because of the age and everything like that, they can't do all. So this again is why if we come together in community, I was 24 when I moved here. And so for the youth, it was challenging. You had to be very resourceful. You had to be an entrepreneur. You had to find ways to survive. And a lot of us are surviving. We are surviving, but we have to get to a position to where we can thrive, to where our ideas, our visions, we can plant them in fertile soil and they can grow. It's not just like they die off. And that too is what happens. A lot of people come, they get discouraged, and they go back broken or defeated, and they try and regroup because there's no community, there's no support system. So that's one of the things that I'm working towards now. That's why I'm kind of waving the flag and I'm trying to speak out more now, is to kind of be a beacon of just that, of opportunity, and how we can, if done right, we can spark sustainable opportunity. The other big issue here in investments in development, because of what we're doing here and how capital intensive it is, it's at times, and this is not a blanket across the board, but to reap a return to where it's that lucrative in that, I'm going to just put my money in over there because I'm going to make so much back. It doesn't really work like that here. And if you're not careful, you're always investing. What you have to be able to do is you have to understand the climate and the environment here, and you have to be able to invest in a way in which it can become sustainable, in that you don't have to keep on reinvesting new funds. Your venture can start to take care of itself first. That's the number one goal, is to not have to be the donor. We want to spark the business or the endeavor. We want to spark it. We want to create the big bang, and that's the capital and that's the resources. And it's not just financial resources, it's intellectual resources, it's human resources. One of the biggest issues here is the level of micromanagement that everything takes. It takes a ridiculous level of micromanagement on simple things. So what you'll find is the minute you turn your back or you travel, things go astray. And it's not even like, it's not the technical things. It's the quote unquote common sense things that it's just that's relative. What's common to us may not be common here. And then depending on where you are and who you're dealing with. And so we need to be able to spark the big bang, spark the development that can then allow this, whatever it is, if it's a farm, if it's a business, whatever it is, so that way it can first take care of itself, so that you no longer have to keep on putting in. And then after that, it's where it becomes profit generating. I like to say that I'm trying to focus on sustainable developments. In the beginning, a lot of my work was more nonprofit, and that was only because of the legality of being a foreigner and operating for-profit businesses. There's a lot of legalities, and there's a lot of other things with regard to like land ownership. There's a lot of weird things that make it difficult that it's not as straightforward. The land ownership is a big thing. When we talk about investing in land, it doesn't quite work like that here. That's a total British leasehold system. If you're not careful, your expectation of that is totally off. So it doesn't work for generational wealth if you're not careful. And then even then, no matter how careful you are, there needs to be reform. And so we're so early that some of the stuff is discouraging, but if you are aware, if you are informed, if you are not alone, and if we can develop teams, then we can navigate some of these things better so that we can have more success. Because right now, I would say as a group, we've had limited success. There are not that many success stories. And then even when you look at those success stories, what was success in that story? And so that's why, again, it's not to be discouraged. It's to look at, okay, that's what we're dealing with. How do we create the solution for those?